Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Tonight's guest is somebody that covers horse racing for Horse Racing Nation and the Daily Gallop to talk about football and baseball and some other stuff as well. Jeff Byrnes, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great. All right, NFL, the season's underway. 3 weeks old, about a little over 3 weeks old. Thursday night game, the Eagles and the Packers. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I did watch it. It was a very good game. Considering the start that the Green Bay Packers got off to, it was actually pretty impressive for Carson Wentz to drive down the field, lead the Eagles 21 points before the half, and then the Eagles defense really holding the Packers down in the second half, holding them just to 7 in the third, and then the late interception late in the fourth quarter to prevent them from tying the score. But it was a very good game all around. Pretty rough game too. A couple people were taken out on stretchers, but hopefully it sounds like both of them are going to be okay. But very good game all around.
Yeah, very good game all around. I was very impressed with how the Eagles came back and weathered the storm a little bit. Unfortunate what happened with the cornerback Maddox. Hopefully he'll be okay. Prayers to him. But anyway, the Eagles get the big stop, the interception in the end zone to end any hope that the Packers had to force overtime in that game. Now the Eagles are 2-2. Packers' first loss of the season. I think both of these teams will be fine long term. And Aaron Rodgers had his best game of the year, don't you think?
Yes, he did. He looked very comfortable in the pocket. Obviously, he had good arm strength. He was throwing good motion with the arm, throwing down the field. Did make a couple of mistakes with the fumble that led to 7 points for the Eagles in the second quarter. Also, the late interception, possibly throwing it to a little tight window. But he definitely had a good game. Obviously, he'll tell you he's going to be disappointed in himself because of the mistakes made late in the game. But overall, Aaron Rodgers is, he'll pick himself up, dust himself off, and get ready to go for the next one.
Alrighty, yeah. In the Eagles division, Daniel Jones made his first start last week and led the Giants to a 32-31 victory. Were you impressed by Daniel Jones? Because I certainly was.
Yes, I was very impressed with Daniel Jones. I figured he was going to probably play well, considering the circumstances. I know Tampa Bay defense may be a little bit questionable, but he exceeded expectations for sure. This is a guy who, of course, a lot of people criticized the Giants for picking the number 6 overall. Many people thought Giants should have taken either Dwayne Haskins or Josh Allen, the defensive tackle, now with the Jaguars. But throughout the preseason and very much this game last week, Jones has shown that he looks like he could be a caliber quarterback now. I know it's only one game, but obviously he's going to have another one coming up on Sunday against the Redskins. And I'll tell you what, if Daniel Jones can help the Giants win on Sunday, Giants will be at 2-2, and now you're looking at the season a whole differently, considering where you were a couple weeks ago. But very impressed. He's finding open receivers. He's mostly impressed with his accuracy. He can definitely place the ball right in the receiver's hands. Also, the mobility, his awareness in the pocket. The one bugaboo with him, obviously, is the fumbles. I know that's something he knows too. He has to clean it up, but overall, very impressive debut.
Yes, I was very impressed as well, and I actually picked the Giants to win that game last weekend, and I was right because it was more of a play against the Buccaneers and a little bit of a Jones team rallies around them situation I saw coming, but it was very impressive what he did, especially leading them from 18 points back without their best player in Saquon Barkley. Also in the NFC East, you have the Cowboys, who are undefeated, go to the Saints. Do you think it's a trap game for them on Sunday against the Saints, or do you think they survived that one?
I think it could be a trap game. Actually, for the most part, you could look at it both ways. It could be a trap game, but at the same time, this is the Cowboys team that has shown that, Dak Prescott, currently through the first 3 games, is having already some of the best starts of his career. I know the first 3 opponents the Cowboys faced are kind of suspect, but so everybody's saying the Cowboys are the best team in the NFL. Well, this is their biggest test so far in the early season against the Saints. It's a very good Saints defense. Obviously, I know the Saints are without Drew Brees, but Teddy Bridgewater, he went up to Seattle last week and did very, very well against that tough Seattle defense. So I definitely can see this as a trap game. But if as long as Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, all the receivers are on the same page. I won't be surprised if they pull off another victory on Sunday.
Yeah, I could totally see that game going either way. I am on the Cowboys, but I'm fearing a little bit of trap game potential because next week the Cowboys host the Green Bay Packers in a big 4:25 game window with Joe Buck and Trakeman on the call on Fox next Sunday. So I could see a little bit of look ahead here for Dallas, but the no Drew Brees thing still worries me for New Orleans, as well as Bridgewater looked on Sunday against the Seahawks, and as well as the defense and special teams. Two quarterbacks that face off on Sunday within their same division are both heavily criticized for either their poor starts or having a reputation of being bad in bad games, and those two quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins and Mitch Trubisky. Which quarterback comes away with the win, you think, and which defense do you think steps up more, Vikings or Bears?
That game, I think, is a very interesting game. Obviously, Mitchell Trubisky's off to a very slow start this season. I mean, honestly, I think he should be a little lucky that the Bears are 2-1 right now, considering they escaped in Denver a couple weeks ago. But looking at this game, I think ultimately the Bears will win this game. I think Mitchell Trubisky actually could be in line to keep improving off of that. You know, he's coming off definitely his best game of the season so far against Washington on Monday night last week. But Kirk Cousins to me just has not seemed impressive. I mean, both their victories have come courtesy of their defense, and the run game has really been well for them. Kirk Cousins, for the most part, has really not been great this year. So I think now going up against the Bears defense in Chicago, they're going to be fired up over there, and Khalil Mack's going to be all over them and the entire Bears defense. So I think Mitchell Trubisky, and I think he's going to keep on going, and I think the Bears will pull it off on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love the Bears. It's one of my favorite picks of the weekend, although it didn't make my Twitter top 5 picks as much as I like the Bears. And it's probably because Trubisky scares me, but Kirk Cousins scares me more in a big spot. And I like Khalil Mack, best player on the field on Sunday, and I really think that the Bears will get a much-needed victory within the division at home, considering that they dropped the opener to the Bears at home in division play the first week of the season. Kyle Allen had an impressive debut against the Cardinals. Do you think he is for real?
It's a little tough to tell. I mean, this is the Cardinals. Let's keep in mind. I mean, they haven't had the greatest last couple of years, but he was impressive. You got to given his numbers and everything, but it's going to be interesting to see how long the Panthers can keep going with him. Obviously, they ruled out Cam Newton right away after that game last week, and it's going to be. Looks like it's going to be a little while longer before we see Cam Newton back on the field. But right now, this is Kyle Allen's team, and he did very well against the Cardinals. He had good pocket protection. He threw the ball great. Now he's going to Houston. It's facing a very tough Houston defense. That's definitely going to be a tough test for him. If he can somehow squeak by Houston and he can get the Carolina to 2-2, then they're looking at their season completely different. So very interesting to see what he does on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. I like Kyle Allen, but I think it's more about what's around him rather than him himself. I really like Christian McCaffrey and in the receivers he has. Greg Olson's still a good tight end. So I think it's more about what's around him rather than Kyle Allen. So I think he was put in a good place to succeed. Speaking of the Cardinals, do you think this is the week where they finally get a win, or do you think that Seattle bounces back after their rough loss against the Saints?
I think Arizona's got to wait another week for a win. I just think Seattle's too strong. Russell Wilson is off to another great start this year. He had a really big game last week despite the loss to the Saints. I think going to Arizona, and Russell Wilson has a really good record against Arizona so far in his career. I just think the defense is too talented, too strong. I think they're going to give Kyler Murray, basically a welcome to our division kind of game. And I expect another big performance from Russell Wilson this week. So I'm going to take the Seahawks on the road.
This was a tough one for me because I just think the Cards are due. Yeah, I could see where Seattle wins are a 6-point favorite, but I won't be surprised if this is like another trap game for Seattle because everyone just, like if the Vegas line is telling you that they assume that Seattle's going to win, but like I won't be that surprised if it's the Cardinals that come out on top. So I think that, to me, was the hardest game to pick of the weekend, to be quite honest. Are you buying the San Francisco 49ers 3-0 start?
Yeah, the 49ers are off to Garoppolo, for the most part, has looked decent. Not great, but he's done well enough to lead the 49ers to their early start. Obviously, the schedule is going to get a lot tougher. Plus, they're coming off a week where they faced the Steelers with Mason Rudolph back there. Obviously, we don't know what would have happened if Ben Roethlisberger was back there, but against that 49ers defense. But give credit to the coaching staff. They've really done a great job bringing Garoppolo back and bringing in some new pieces to that 49ers defense, and they've done really well. So 3-0 is a very good start for them.
Yes, I am very impressed with the 49ers, too. They could have lost that Steelers game if not for all those Mason Rudolph turnovers. But the 49ers are a team that really, I think, has improved on defense this year. But I think there will be tougher tests coming, especially once they play the Rams and the Seahawks. The Dolphins are the worst team in the league, obviously. What are the percent chance you'd give them of actually going 0-16? I would say it's about maybe like a 50-50.
I think it's 50-50 too. I mean, honestly, I'd say actually 60-40 in favor of going 0-16 because they're just a mess right now. There's no other way around it. The Miami Dolphins, offensively, defensively, have just look atrocious on both sides of the ball. And obviously, if you look at their schedule, I think the time where they could actually go and get a win, they play the Washington Redskins week 6. That could possibly be in line for a win. Also, maybe you could play Cincinnati Bengals, but that's much later in the year. And this is a team that hasn't even scored over 10 points at all in the first 3 regular season games. They got blown out by Baltimore, blown out by New England, blown out by Dallas. And now they got the Chargers coming in, and the waters are not going to get any deeper for them. But it's not looking good for them. I think they think there's a bigger chance of them going 0-16.
I think it's 50-50 only because they have games against bad teams like the Redskins and the Bengals, and who knows, maybe if Darnold's not back yet for the Jets, you never know with them. They play at the Giants, but as we know, it's Daniel Jones, not Eli Manning. So they have some bad teams left on the schedule that they could potentially win a couple games. In their division, the best team in the NFL, the New England Patriots, are they headed for a trap game in Buffalo this weekend against another AFC East team in the Bills?
Do not underestimate the Buffalo Bills. Now, I don't know if exactly the Bills can pull this off, but they have gone off to a really good start this year. I think they surprised a lot of people going 3-0 this early in the season, especially, they came from 16 down to beat the Jets. They beat the Giants at MetLife Stadium. So back-to-back weeks they travel to MetLife Stadium and beat both the New York teams in there. And then they come from behind and beat the Cincinnati Bengals late in the fourth quarter. But the defense for the Buffalo Bills, I believe, is one of the most underrated in all of the football. So I think the Bills can keep it close. I don't know. I just think the Patriots' offense could be a little bit too strong, and maybe they'll come away at the end. But I think this Bills team, I don't know if they win this week, but I think they're definitely going to be ones to watch going forward.
Yes, I think that's a team that can certainly make the playoffs in the AFC. I think they'll be competitive with the Patriots, but I just am unsure whether they're going to get the win or not. I have to give you credit for something. You and a couple of my other guests had picked the Ravens, including Doug Saravo, to win the AFC North. I know the season's not over yet, but they are 3-0 right now and the best team in that division right now, so I have to give you some credit on that. And Lamar Jackson, I thought he was going to be a good player, but I wasn't sure about it happening this season because I wasn't sure about the weapons around him. But those guys have really been impressive to me. And what are your takes on the Baltimore Ravens right now?
Not surprised. I think Lamar Jackson is probably one of the two best QBs to come out of last year's draft. Obviously, a lot of people keep on saying, he's more of a runner, He has a great arm. He really does. I mean, he can throw that ball at least like 40 yards down the field. He can throw it with accuracy. He's a really good quarterback, and I would definitely build my team around him. That's what the Baltimore Ravens have done. They added weapons to the offense. They've, despite the loss of C.J. Mosley on defense when he went to the Jets, they really haven't lost a step on the defense. Take away the Kansas City Chiefs game last week, but this is a Ravens team that's for real. I think this is a team that can definitely go all the way as long as Lamar Jackson's still doing his thing, as long as that defense is still there. The emergence of Hollywood Brown on the offensive wide receiver, who they just drafted this year, I think he's another weapon for Lamar Jackson as the season going to go on. But This is a Baltimore team that's definitely going to be one to watch as we get closer to the playoffs. I think they're going to hang in there.
Yeah, I believe that they'll be potentially hosting a playoff game in the wild card weekend. I really think that that's a strong possibility right now, especially with the Browns' slow start and Ben Roethlisberger being out for the Steelers, and we all know the Bengals are not very good. Gardner Minshew has been a surprise player in the NFL this year. Jaguars are 1-2, but Minshew really has opened up some people's eyes, especially when he came out in that Chiefs game and was literally slinging it around, but they lost that game because Mahomes is Mahomes, and that was in week 1 of the season. What are your thoughts on Gardner Minshew?
Yeah, I believe he was a late 6th-round pick out of this year's draft. So he really flew in under the radar, and he's definitely taken the league by storm, not only for his on-field, but some off-the-field antics too. But he's definitely a fun quarterback to watch. He's got mobility. He's got a great arm. He can definitely throw a perfect, accurate pass to his wide receivers. He appears the teammates love him in the locker room, but he's definitely one that's caught this league by surprise. And hey, who knows if Jaguars can maybe get a couple of wins here, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when Nick Foles comes back. Do they turn the reins immediately back over to him, or do they keep this young rookie quarterback who's been doing pretty well for them? So definitely something to watch as Nick Foles comes back later in the year.
Yeah, that is certainly one of the key second half storylines to watch for the Jacksonville Jaguars, although they're being overshadowed right now by the turmoil going on with Jalen Ramsey and his request for a trade. Who do you think would be the best fit for Jalen Ramsey? I have a perfect team in my mind. I want to hear who you like in terms of a fit for Jalen Ramsey.
There's a couple of teams I have in mind. One is the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East, because I don't know if you watched that game last night, but that Eagles defense, especially the secondary, was getting tortured by Devontae Adams and a lot of those guys. Ronald Darby obviously has been out for a little while, but they just made a signing today. But I think he would be a good fit over in Philly. Another team that could come into mind could be the Oakland Raiders. I know they need help on the secondary as well. The Kansas City Chiefs could make a big argument too. Their secondary has been a little iffy over the last few weeks, but yeah, those are 3 teams I think that could fit it with him.
The first team you listed is the team where I think he ultimately lands, the Philadelphia Eagles. I just don't see the Jaguars trading Ramsey in conference, so I could see a world where he's in Philadelphia, and I think that puts him right there with Dallas atop the NFC East. So I'm going to say that he goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think it's a matter of when, not if. I just think that that's just a perfect fit for him, as well as the Chiefs are a good fit too, but like I said, I just don't see them trading within the AFC. And you see that everywhere, really, in the NFL. Like, you don't see teams trade within conference very often. Like, the Giants traded Odell to the AFC Browns. The Seahawks traded away Frank Clark to the Chiefs. So that's another AFC-NFC trade. So I think he goes to the NFC for sure. Patrick Mahomes is off to another fantastic start this season. I think he's going to repeat as MVP. I predicted that before the year. Do you agree, or do you like Lamar Jackson, or even somebody like Dak Prescott or Tom Brady, or somebody else to possibly steal the award from Mahomes?
Right now, yeah, I would say Patrick Mahomes is the favorite for the MVP title. He's had a great first few weeks. I would definitely keep my eye on Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady. He has a great year every year. It seems like no matter what the circumstances are. Dak Prescott, he's off to a flying start early on. I think he could definitely throw his name if he keeps this up. So right now, those are my top 3: Mahomes, Brady, and Prescott. By the end of the year, unless Prescott regresses a little bit, I think hopefully Mahomes could get it.
Yeah, I think Mahomes wins it too. Although, don't rule out your boy Lamar Jackson. I think he'll be in play as well, especially if the Ravens win double-digit games and their division. One last thing for football was announced yesterday by Adam Schefter, who he had it first, that Shakira and J-Lo are your halftime recipients this season in Miami during the Super Bowl. Do you like that?
Yes, I like that very, very much. I just hope it's a lot better than Maroon 5.
Yeah, I think it will be better than Maroon 5, and there's already speculation.
That should be a great show.
And there's already speculation that Pitbull's going to make like a surprise appearance at halftime because he's from Miami, so it makes a lot of sense for him to make an appearance in that halftime as well. Because every year it seems like there's that surprise person that shows up at the halftime show and nobody expects it. Like I remember one year the guitar singer from Kiss came out on stage and nobody expected it with when the Black Eyed Peas did it, back when it was Packers Steelers from Dallas. There's a couple ones that I remember that were unexpected surprise appearances in the halftime show. Some of them were leaked out by the media. The one with Kiss certainly was not. Let's switch over to baseball. The World Series, many people feel it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be the Dodgers against either New York or Houston. Who do you think is the best chance to upset the apple cart a little bit and make a run? Like a team that's in the World Series that's not Yankees, Houston, or Dodgers?
There are two teams that I have in mind, particularly. Two teams in mind. One, I believe, could be the Minnesota Twins. I know that sounds crazy, but the Twins are a very good baseball team. They are a very much heavily powered offense. They can hit a lot of home runs. They can do a lot of good stuff with runners in scoring position. They have a lot of power. Miguel Sano, Nelson Cruz. Rocco Baldelli has done a phenomenal job in his first year as manager. They're on the verge of their 100th win of the season if they can go on and win tonight. So that's a team that I could definitely see making a play. Also, I believe the Atlanta Braves could also make a run with Ronald Acuna and that young team, Josh Donaldson, down in Atlanta. It looks like Acuna is going to be healthy in time for the playoffs. I know he had a little groin scare a few days ago. But, the Twins and the Braves are teams that should definitely be keeping an eye on. That could definitely upset the apple cart.
Yeah, Braves 9-1, Twins 14-1, Astros 2-1 favorites. Dodgers are 23-10, Yankees are 9-2. I have the odds right in front of me because I'm currently watching Daily Wager, and that's on the bottom ticker there as they're showing odds. So I'm going to throw another one at you, who also is 14-1. I like the St. Louis Cardinals. If they can upset the Dodgers, perhaps in a series like in the NLCS, I think that they have a real chance to get to the World Series. Actually, if they would beat the Dodgers in the NLCS, then they'd be in the World Series. But I meant if they beat the Braves in the first round, I think they have a good chance to knock off the Dodgers in the second round. I like their rotation. Jack Flaherty's really good. Adam Wainwright has turned back the clock. They have a good offense. Paul Goldschmidt, Marcelo Ozuna, Paul DeYoung's had a great year. Yadier Molina's been in a lot of big games. Andrew Miller's pitched in a lot of big games out of the bullpen. Carlos Martinez has been fine as closer. So I wouldn't rule out the St. Louis Cardinals. That would be my pick to upset the apple cart.
The St. Louis Cardinals, to me, that's a very good pick as well. Jack Flaherty is a pitcher for them. What he's done the second half of the year is basically he's been putting up numbers that are just insane, and he's putting himself in line for a possible Cy Young award at the end of the year. And he's really one of the primary reasons that the Cardinals are in position that they are right now. So, that pitching staff, like you said, is very strong with Andrew Miller, and obviously Paul Goldschmidt leading the way on the offense. St. Louis could definitely make a run if they can get past the Dodgers.
I believe so too, but they wouldn't, in theory, see the Dodgers until the NLCS. Let's just assume that they win the NL Central, because that's not a done deal yet. I don't even know what their magic number is, but if the Brewers and the Cardinals are tied after Sunday, then they have to play Monday to game 163, and I think I know who I'm picking in that game, especially if Jack Flaherty's on the mound in that game. So I would not rule out the possibility of a game 163 for them, or if... Wait, keep going?
Right now, I'm sorry, Matt, but right now the Cardinals are actually up one game on the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers, I believe, have won 17 of the last 19 games, and the Cardinals start a 3-game set against the Cubs starting tonight, and then the Milwaukee Brewers start a 3-game set against the Colorado Rockies. So it's definitely going to come down to the very end of the NL Central, and first of all, I just want to say it's been just truly incredible to watch what the Milwaukee Brewers have done this last month. I believe the record is 20-4 this month, and a majority of them up without Christian Yelich. So the fact that they're even in contention for the NL Central, let alone the wild card, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, great run by the Brewers. Craig Counsell certainly has to be the favorite for the National League Manager of the Year, especially for what they've done in the month of September. But yeah, there is a world where the Brewers win the division if they sweep Colorado and the Cubs beat the Cardinals 2 out of 3, then the Brewers win the division. Because the Brewers would have more wins than the Cardinals. I talked about it on my regular podcast today, how that scenario would play out if the Brewers were to win the NL Central. Also in the NL Central are the Chicago Cubs. They've lost 9 straight. This is an absolute stunning collapse in my mind, and I think they're playing like a team that knows that their manager is about to get fired. And I know you're probably on my side for this one, aren't you?
Yeah, I think we're seeing Joe Maddon's last days as the manager of the Chicago Cubs. What's happened to the Cubs over these last few weeks has just been stunning. I mean, a couple weeks ago, they swept the New York Mets up at Citi Field, and they looked like a team that was ready to go for a postseason run or make a run from the postseason. And since then, they've just looked completely lifeless. Greg Kimbrell out of the bullpen has been atrocious for the contract that they signed him for. Obviously, he gave up the 2 home runs on the 2 pitches that really deflated their season last week. Really, it just seems like everybody just stopped hitting. It just seems like they're just not interested anymore. I mean, I don't know why, because they were right in the thick of the race, and suddenly they're now 8 games back, and they're eliminated from postseason contention. So they could still play spoiler for the St. Louis Cardinals, but I don't know. I think everybody in that locker room feels like they just want to go home.
Yeah, that's a team that really is looking forward to playing golf. I think Madden's gone. I think Madden will be in another job next year. Ken Rosenthal's already reporting that the Angels might fire Brad Ausmus, and Madden might be going there. Similar situation I remember happened with the Cubs and the Rays a few years ago. Rays let go of Madden. He immediately went to the Cubs, and the Cubs fired Rick Renteria after 1 year. And he's saying that the Angels might do something similar here with Ausmus, so keep an eye out for that. That would be very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Madden's future. And heck, the Cubs team future as a whole as well, because Chris Bryant's name has been thrown into offseason trade talk. Javier Baez coming off that injury. I think that injury let them down too. Maybe if he doesn't get hurt, maybe they are still in the mix for a wild card spot. So don't underestimate that. And you mentioned the Mets and how the Cubs swept them a while back ago. Their manager is also, in my opinion, on the hot seat. Do you think he's let go as the Mets manager? Mickey Callaway, I'm talking about.
For the Mets, I believe a lot of people believe he's going to be gone, but it's going to be a tough call for the front office because Mickey Callaway, technically record-wise, they did improve from last year, and they're going to finish with above 500 record. I mean, this is a good young team that they have. They have a lot of talent both in the pitching staff and on the in the batter's box, but ultimately, in the end, I think they will make a manager change. I just don't think Mickey Callaway is the right man for the job. I just think the record right now is 83 and 76. They could easily add about 6-7 more wins in that column. They could be right in the middle of that wild card chase. Obviously, the bullpen has cost the Mets a lot of games this year, particularly Edwin Diaz in particular. But I think at the end of the day, Mickey Callaway's days in New York are over.
Yeah, me too. And the one brutal loss that stands out to me for the Mets, although they did win a couple games after this when they blew that 6-run lead in D.C. a few weeks ago, that was brutal. I actually thought to myself, hey, Nationals are 9-1 on the money line, even though they're trailing by 6 runs. And then I didn't pull the trigger because it was a 6-run game, and I thought that'd be a waste of money. That was one big regret I had a few weeks ago. And then another brutal loss for the Cubs was, remember when Bryce Harper hit that walk-off grand slam against them? That was a brutal loss that the Cubs had. I don't remember if that was after the Mets series or before the Mets series, but those 2 losses from the Cubs and the Mets, to me, were just really bad losses that those teams really couldn't afford to lose when you look back on it. Speaking of the Nationals, who would you go with in the wild card game, assuming that they host it? I believe they'll host it. They're going to be in it. Assuming they host it, who would you go with in the wild card game at home?
Well, for me, in the wild card game, the easy choice would be Max Scherzer, but since coming off the IL, he really hasn't looked the same. He's given up a lot of runs in some particular innings. His ERA has increased. Right now, if you go with the hot hand, I would say Steven Strasburg could be in line to start the wild card game. Obviously, his numbers this year, he's put up some of the best numbers of his career in 2019. He's a pitcher that has done really well in big games. He's pitched well in the postseason. So if it comes down to it, you could start off with over to Scherzer, but I think Steven Strasburg definitely could be in line for the start.
Yeah, that should be very interesting. I think they'll go with Scherzer because he's Max Scherzer and he has the big game reputation. He has done poorly sometimes in big games. Remember in Game 5 against the Cubs a few years back, he came in out of the bullpen and I believe he gave up a home run to Javier Baez, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember that? He's had some...
I believe that was Baez, yes.
I believe it was Baez too, and that was a bad moment he's had, but obviously this Brewers team without Christian Yelich, yes, they're hot, but you're only as hot as your starting pitcher is, in my opinion, in baseball. And I don't know if the Brewers really have that big of a chance against Max Scherzer, assuming he's healthy. I would go with Strasburg if Scherzer isn't really right, but if Scherzer's okay and healthy, I'm definitely going with Max Scherzer, especially at home. And on the road, I would probably go with Scherzer as well if the game were to be played in Milwaukee or heck even St. Louis. If the Nats drop a couple games here and if one of those teams pass the Nats, you never know. I think the Nats are close to clinching home field. Let's just assume they get it. But it should be interesting to see what the Nats do. We talked about how Chris Bryant is possibly on the trade block. Another big name player that's going to be on the trade block this winter is Mookie Betts. I had Terry Cushman from the Benny and the Betts podcast on here about 2 months ago, and he said that he thinks that Mookie Betts will be on another team in 2020. Do you agree with him, or do you think he's in Boston to start the 2020 season?
I think it's going to be very difficult for the Red Sox to bring Mookie Betts back because they almost didn't even bring him back this year because they had a very difficult time of negotiating a contract with him. I believe he's getting paid $21 million this year by the Red Sox. And knowing him, obviously he's a year older. He played very well this season. That number is going to increase dramatically. So, and the Red Sox, I don't know if they're going to be able to afford him. And that's not the only problem. Obviously, JD Martinez going to opt out of his contract. It's looking like that he will. But the way Mookie Betts has been talking to the media over the last few months or so, it sure sounds like he's prepared to move on from Boston, which, in my opinion, would be a bad mistake for Boston to make because Mookie Betts obviously is a homegrown player for them. He's the 2018 MVP. He played a huge role in their World Series title. I think it would be a mistake for them to get rid of him, but he said at the end of the day, it's a business, and so I think come Sunday, it could very well be Mookie Betts' last game with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a chance they trade him this winter. He's a free agent after the 2020 season, so if you're going to trade Mookie Betts, if you're the Red Sox, you have to trade him to somewhere that has a good farm system. I think there are a couple teams in play. I had a list of teams when I had Terry on my podcast. Let me look and see if I could find that for you because I had some teams down. I believe that one of the teams I had was the Braves on that list. Yes, I did have the Braves. They have a great farm system. Can you imagine him and Acuna in the same outfield? That would just be insane. I think if the Cubs decide to make major changes, maybe them, and maybe they could throw Kyle Schwarber in that deal, and he could be their DH, the Red Sox DH long term. If the White Sox want to turn into a win-now team, maybe them. I wouldn't rule out the Padres, the San Francisco Giants, if they decide to bring back Madison Bumgarner and decide to go for it, although they have a new manager, so you never know what they'll do there. The Mets, I think, are a possibility as well. So I think there are a couple possibilities there for Mookie Betts. But we'll save that conversation for the offseason in terms of real threats to trade for Mookie Betts. Jose Ramirez came back from his injury this past week. I ultimately think that's what's going to cost the Indians a spot in the playoffs. Their tragic numbers won. They lost 2 games to the White Sox. So that team to me looks finished. Do you think that injury is what held them back really in terms of a playoff spot?
I think it was. Jose Ramirez was a very viable member of that Cleveland Indians team. And you saw right away when he came back, he smashed a grand slam and then another 3-run home run. His presence in the lineup was very, very well missed. And the Indians, they got Yasiel Puig and a couple other big bats in there, but they definitely missed his appearance in the lineup. And as far as the Indians go, though, they lost 2 games in a row to the White Sox that, quite frankly, they should not have lost. Last night they got shut out 8-0. Only got 4 hits in the game. You can't do that when you're in the middle of a wild card chase. And the Indians, look like after that injury, they just, pitching has been subpar, but Ramirez's presence in the lineup definitely didn't help anything for them.
Yeah, that was really, to me, the death blow of their season now looking back. Although they kind of hung around a little bit, I thought if he didn't get hurt, they could have won the AL Central, quite frankly, because they were in first place when he got hurt. I remember they won 2 games at Yankee Stadium in a 4-game set, and they were in first place in that division. And then he got hurt, and then their season kind of went off the rails. That's why I think that injury ultimately is what cost them a spot in this playoffs. Outside of Mickey Callaway and Joe Madden, 2 managers we already discussed, are there any other managers you think that will be getting a pink slip come next week potentially?
Obviously, we know there's already a couple of changes in made. Of course, the Giants manager is obviously retiring. It was announced Ned Yost is retiring from the Kansas City Royals, so he's going to be gone. The manager for the Angels, it appears that he's on the hot seat, of course, according to Ken Rosenthal. But around the league, obviously, Gabe Kapler for the Philadelphia Phillies, I believe he's going to be on the hot seat as well. Obviously, signing Bryce Harper this past offseason to that record contract, the Phillies had a lot of expectations, and they're 1 loss away from clinching at least a 500 season. That's what is not the season that they were expecting. And, of course, he made some very questionable decisions with the bullpen. Of course, the lineups were not particularly great. Bryce Harper had an average year. They're currently on a 6-game losing streak and eliminated from postseason contention. So, Gabe Kapler, I will not be surprised if once the season's over, I believe he's going to be fired as well.
Yes, I think that's obviously the 3rd manager that I would have had on this list if it wasn't for Madden and Callaway. I think he's fired as well. I would not even rule out Dave Martinez if the Nationals lose the wild card game because obviously expectations are big there. They signed Patrick Corbin. They don't have Bryce Harper anymore, but it's still a team that has a lot of talent, and that's an organization that tends to make changes all the time. And don't forget, they underachieved massively last year. And I think this was a team a lot of people picked to win the division before the year. I had the Braves winning this division before the season, so I was right. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Dave Martinez getting let go by the Nationals if they lose in the wild card game. A couple quick things before we let you go. The Brooklyn Nets had their media day. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant spoke to the media. They're taking shots at the Warriors because they played him in Game 5 of the Finals. What did you make of that in those comments from Durant and Irving?
Very interesting comments. First off, it sure sounded like Kyrie Irving was very excited to come to the Nets. Obviously, it sure sounded like he was he had the Nets squarely in mind when it came to his free agency. Obviously, he has a home in New Jersey, so he's very close to his family. But as far as Kevin Durant goes, it sure sounded like the Warriors didn't really quite handle his injury very, very, very well. So when they played him in Game 5 and he tore his Achilles, it seriously impacted his free agency. I don't know if it would have made a difference if he would have came back had the injury not occurred, or maybe he would have gone to another team, but that wasn't the Nets. But it sure sounded like Kevin Durant was very excited to be in Brooklyn. Obviously, the Nets have a very good thing going for them right now, and so hopefully Kevin Durant can rest up, get healthy, and get back on the court very soon.
Yeah, I don't think Durant's playing this year, although there has been some speculation that he might play. I ultimately think that the Nets will be smart and not play him at all this season. One last thing before we go, horse racing. The Breeders' Cup's about to come to an end. The big Breeders' Cup, I believe, is on November 2nd, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it's a 2-day event. It's on Friday, November 2nd, Friday, November 3rd. And so we're getting very close to those 2 days.
Yes.
Right now, sorry, November 1st and 2nd. November 1st and 2nd.
I had the 2nd in mind because I knew that was Saturday. I know Halloween's the 31st. That's Thursday. Friday's the 1st, and then Saturday's the 2nd. I had the 2nd in mind. I know that's a Saturday. But yeah, you have that coming up. And what are we to look forward to in the Breeders' Cup race?
Well, there's over a 2-day stretch. There's 14 races. There's going to be 6 on Friday, 8 on Saturday. On the Friday card, there's going to be a couple big 2-year-old races. We'll see horses from the United States. We'll see horses from Europe, particularly England, Ireland, France. So a bunch of international connections will be coming in. There's a couple of big Breeders' Cup races, prep races this weekend for 2-year-olds at Belmont Park. A couple of high-priced 2-year-olds going to be running in there. On the Saturday card, you have the Breeders' Cup Dispatch for 3-year-old fillies and up. You're going to see some talented Grade 1 fillies in there and a couple of, possible Horse of the Year contender on the line in there. The Breeders' Cup Classic, obviously, is the biggest race of them all. Biggest purse going a mile and a quarter over at Santa Anita. So, the next couple of weeks we really decide, who's in, who's out, and as far as favoritism goes, and definitely something to look forward to.
Yes, it is something to look forward to. I'll probably get you on one more time before the that weekend in the Breeders' Cup, and then maybe next time I'll have you on, the NBA will be underway, NHL will be underway, World Series will be going on potentially, and more NFL. And hopefully I'll have you on by the end of October. Sounds good?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, good to talk to you.
All right, thanks, Madison. Always great to talk.